Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Destroy Before Listening, which is part 2 of a conversation between myself, Pete Byrne and Graham Thompson. This episode is more like a case study of the groups I've been involved with, moving from the fast chaos and hardcore of Orenda Forest in the late 90s to the formation of Marzaran in the early 2000s, and then learning more about production with the ambient drone of RYN. We look at our involvement in the scene here in the 2000s. Also discussed here is the approach to DIY home recording and some Venom stories. Please rate, review, subscribe and share this, that would be great. Or follow on Instagram at Destroy Before Listening. There will also be various links in the show notes. Thanks.
The physicality and the sort of almost like confrontational aggression definitely was something that Orenda Forest had. I know from the time that I saw them, and that band must have come sometime fairly soon after Chinese Burn, and I think there was there a band in the meantime called Curtis?
Yeah, that was probably, I don't know, around the same time as Orenda Forest, but it was pretty much the same people, I think.
Right, okay.
That was like more the melodic hardcore thing,
Yeah.
but we just, as soon as we heard the American stuff, it was just like, fuck that, we went to doing the orange stuff, and that was the more of the like contemporary American bands.
Yeah.
We were just bang into it.
That's 98, right?
Yeah, I mean, the way I'd met Rob and like Steve and Tony, it was through the sort of classifieds you put up in record shops.
Mm-hmm.
You'd like pin up a thing like bass player wanted or like whoever for it to do a band.
Yeah.
And then like next to nobody rang. I think those were the only people I'd spoken to. Maybe like one other person. Then it was like Tony was just he didn't live like too far. He was in Bladen. It was like 5 minutes away, 10 minutes.
So who put the poster up, you and Rob?
No, it was me. I put posters up and I knew Steve through that. So I knew he played the bass, and then like Tony was like playing guitar, and he was like, "Oh, I know this kid who can do drums." So that was the Chinese Burn stuff, I think.
Right.
And then we just sort of decided we'd do like the orange stuff. I don't really know how the musical instruments were allocated. It was almost like we just thought, "Oh, I'm doing this. I can't really do it, but I'll just do this. I'll try this," and then.
Well, going back to what we were talking about earlier on about instruments and getting into it and that kind of thing, you played drums in that band, and your drumming in that band was awesome. So, where did you start with the drums? You must have played before that band.
No, not
really.
No, it was just. I mean, I knew I used to kind of like, I suppose, air drummed a bit the melodic hardcore stuff because that was like at a tempo where you could kind of understand.
Yeah.
But then when it was like a few years later, it was just like, all right, I don't know, I can sort of like, I'll try it. And then Rob wanted to try vocals, I think, and he was playing the drums, so simple as that really. And it was kind of learn as you go. Everyone just learned, didn't know anything about anything really. Just, there wasn't much by way of influences that we particularly agreed on, other than it was just had to be kind of confrontational and just out of control. Because me and Tony, we were big, like, into, and Rob, I suppose, like it was the Void and Die Kreuzen and Deep Wound and things, you know, that just the fast, out of control stuff, and then the Gravity Records things.
Yeah.
And then I think Rob and Tony come up with this thing like Harshcore. That was what we were going to play. Well, that was what it was. That was the kind of, it was more of an artistic thing maybe. It was just like a conceptual thing. We've got this thing, we'll just do Harshcore. That just involved us being kind of kids and pissing people off and being out of control and not really giving a fuck.
You definitely achieved what you were trying to do.
Well, if we achieved something, then it was that.
The one time I saw you, it was at the Cumberland Arms, and that was, we've talked about this many times before, but that was where within 10 seconds of starting the set, you'd knocked over all the mic stands. The guy who was doing the PA grabbed, I think it was Steve, by his like collar, screaming in his face. Then Rob was rolling around the floor. He got kicked. his wallet chain got stood on and broke, and I think he lost his wallet, and then somebody belted him in the face, and you only played for about 15 minutes, and that all happened in that time. It was.
I think it was because I'm sure it was like Steve was doing his like just going into the audience and like fucking provoking people, you know, like by like hitting them with his bass kind of thing and just waving his bass around and stuff, and then
Rob was running into people as well. It was a similar thing, but
it was just like I remember that gig as being it was just bad vibes, man. From the very start, it was bad because we knew what we were going to be doing or what we were going to be playing. People weren't going to like it, and we had the mentality of like, well, there's us four who are going to do it, and we don't really care about what other people think and what other people are going to do. We just wanted to kind of get a reaction, I suppose.
There was definitely a weird, sort of antagonistic vibe. You basically, now I think about it, you were the first hardcore band I ever saw, and it was on a bill that was largely metal bands, like local bands, and there was a few tour bands. I know Canvas headlined. Unfortunately, I missed them. So they were metal, but they were hardcore too. But it was just you sort of stood out a bit on the bill, and the metal crowd. And when I'm talking about metal, it was like new metal-ish almost, like we're just not into it.
Well, there was a kind of straight edge band. Well, I mean, I can't remember. Maybe Vengeance of Gaia played it, or like 30 seconds.
No, it was 30 seconds until Armageddon.
30 seconds, right? Oh, well, it was just like a pissing contest, I think. You know, that's essentially what it was. It was just like a bunch of like people who were testosterone flexing hardcore, you know.
Yeah.
And we thought like we'll just come in and fuck with the kind of old guard, even though they weren't. They were probably only like, you know, a couple of years older.
Yeah. I guess so. I mean, at this age now, it makes absolutely zero difference. But
yeah, we're the new wave. We're going to do what we're going to do, and we did it. I mean, the first gig we played was with Sawn-Off.
Oh right.
And that was the sort of crowd that we fitted in with. Really, these kind of like the kind of crust from things. Yeah, we played it. We always played with like Scales. He'd always put us on with those bands because he liked it, and like Flat Earth, there was that end of things. They appreciated what we were about and things, and then there was like Red Monkey and Slamped, like Pete and Rachel. They were like a home for us as well. You know, they were kind of like the people who we aligned with. So we didn't really. It wasn't so much about like anything to do with a scene or anything for us. We were just like, oh well, we always thought we were just like kind of a hardcore band anyway. But you know, other people didn't take it that way. I don't think.
Yeah.
Locally.
So, Orin the Forest only lasted a couple of years, and you did the demo tape, and then you did the split 12-inch with Jazzfinger.
Yeah.
And then that kind of dissipated fairly quickly, didn't it?
It died as soon as quickly as it probably started. It just kind of, it had like till 98, 99, 2000, and then it was just done. We sort of like, we had that batch of songs for the split LP, and there was me and Tony had practiced that stuff, like really, really, really fine-tuned it, really went over it, like just practiced all the time for this, you know, really concise sort of, you know, handful, you know, it was only like 12, 30 minutes or something.
Yeah.
I think Steve was in America or something at the time, so he didn't really know any of the bass parts, and like Rob didn't have any vocals or anything yet, and then it came together pretty quickly because we just said, oh, we've got this, me and Tony were like, oh, we've got this stuff, and we'll just record it, and then we did, and then I think we played a couple of gigs, and then it just sort of like just didn't happen. We just like, we had to practice one time, or we had to practice somewhere different, and it just didn't, there was just nothing.
Yeah.
It was a strange, thinking back, it was like everyone was just wanted to do something else than
fair enough.
What the other people were doing, you know.
I guess it's kind of natural at that age, though, isn't it?
Just
you go through things pretty quickly at that age, don't you?
Yeah, completely. It was like Rob's, well, I want to do drummed in some like indie bands or something. Tony's like, well, I want to be a vocalist for some like band, and Steve was just playing bass in like a pop punk band, or, you know, it was just
Serotonin.
Yeah. Well, no, there was Servo was the band,
right?
after that, and they were like, I think they're quite popular, and he played around because he had like a bass, full on bass rig and everything. It was like China Drums touring bass rig.
That name rings a bell, Servo. I never saw them, but the name does ring a bell from around that time.
And kind of that was that, and then just started. Then I think it didn't really end. Maybe it was 2001 that we stopped doing it, or that was the year when everyone just sort of like went off and did different stuff and different things happened. But yeah, it was just a short-lived, like, burned pretty quickly, and I can appreciate it now. I mean, I've always thought like it was cool, but then hearing it again, I was like, oh yeah. No.
So it's only a few years later that Marzaran starts, and from what you said earlier on, was it Tire Iron?
Yeah,
was almost like the conduit band for Marzaran. Is that right? In a way,
it's sort of a bridge.
Yeah.
In retrospect, when I think about it, because I think I was trying to do stuff on a bass because like someone gave us a drum machine. I was trying to work this drum machine and I couldn't, and then I was just getting kind of frustrated, and then I was like, Marzaran was like that was a kind of a weird way that band came about, because it wasn't really meant to be a band even, or like play live or anything, because there was like a zine, 4D, I think it was, and then I don't know, Lobster gives a copy of it, and like I'd sent them a record to review, I think, whenever the record came out, and then like Lee Stokoe, he read that magazine. Well, there was his stuff in it, and it was just kind of contacted him through the mail, really, through this, or through a zine.
So you and Lee had gone to school together, and he was doing Culver, and you'd been doing Oran the Forest and Tire Iron and what have you. And then
we didn't know, completely different. I mean, we were aware that like each other existed, I think, and that was about it. And then this sort of zine brought things back together, and we thought, like, I sent him a letter or something, just saying, or whatever it was, just saying we should do something, because I didn't really know even what I didn't really know what he did.
Yeah.
And we just did some like bass kind of drone and feedback and things, and then started like talking about various bands, weren't you? Because he was like big into Earth, and that was kind of the thing that was going on, I suppose, at the time, was like Sun,
right?
And people were listening to that kind of thing.
So Marzaran starts around about 2002, and initially it's just you and Lee. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how did you two get together enough to, start something and then make a recording?
Well, I don't. It was just we'd recorded this stuff, and Lee'd always like he'd do a mix and give us the kind of burn a CDR and like listen to it. So there's lots of there was lots of stuff burned. I remember all these CDRs of stuff, and then it was like, oh, this thing's like pretty good, I kind of did something here, or this is a track, or had sort of riffs in some of them that were planned.
Because this is just guitar and bass, right?
This was two basses.
Oh, right, okay.
And we did that for about a year, or till the end of the year. And we put out this CDR. It was like a pro printed thing. We did a sleeve for it and everything. And like, there was this place in Ireland that would like copy up like 100 CDRs. They would just like professionally like put the print on them and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it was when the burners they were still like really unreliable. You could just kind of, if you burned 5 off, probably one of them might work.
Yeah.
The other like 4 would just be
doing it at home.
Problems, yeah, doing it on your computer. So
what was it? Was that CD? Is it Mammothus?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, yeah. We just kind of, I don't know, word of mouth really. Just kind of, we did 100 of them, and then they just went. So I thought like, oh, that's interesting. Then someone was like, oh, you could play, you got to play, or do a gig, and we're like, oh well, I suppose we'll try. And the first thing we did, it was like this weekend thing. It was like loads of bands on, and the Haters were one of the bands. Obviously, like Gillum
and Redman.
Yeah, and we were playing, and like Gillum was setting up his drums. I mean, I'd known him before that, and he knew like what we were about, and the Earth thing, and he'd like the CD that would the recordings. He was into what we were doing, and he was just like setting his drums up when we were playing. And then I remember looking back and thinking, all right, can you not just like fuck off, you know what I mean? We was meant to be playing, not setting his drums up. And he was like putting his cymbals on, and I know the next thing I heard was just like a cymbal wash coming through, and I was just like, oh yeah, right. Then he did that. Oh, I don't know. And then he did some drum fill or something.
What, he like invited himself into your set?
Yeah, pretty much. He just totally jacked the set, yeah. Which is like, you know, if you know him, it's totally the kind of thing that he'd do.
I mean, if anyone's going to hijack your set on the drums, if it's Gillum...
I'm not bothered, yeah. I just thought it was cool. I thought it was funny. But then I looked back and he was playing, and I was thinking, this fucking cunt, you know what I mean? Just playing drums and that, what do you think he's doing? And then he's like, it's all right, that. And at the end we finished, and I was like, oh yeah, I thought you were just setting your drums up. And he was like, yeah, but I was getting into it, you know, so I just thought I'd have a go on that. And I was like, so I suppose the first time we played, he was playing the drums.
That's mad.
Unofficially or whatever, you know. Then it kind of switched to, I don't know, I thought I'd get a drummer because it's like kind of came in contact with Rob again, and he was like, well, I said, do you want to play drums, and I'll play guitar or something now, and we'll kind of do a band. And that's how it happened. So
where did that decide to switch to the guitar come from? Just to make it more of a quote-unquote traditional band setup?
Probably, yeah. I was just listening to Black Sabbath, Master of Reality, and I was trying to figure out the tuning of it, because I had it in like, my guitar was in a standard tuning, and I was like, oh yeah, this is in like you drop it down. Mm-hmm. It was like 2 steps or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's what I used to tune it to, and we just kind of that's the reason for that, and then we just played with Rob, and then did some recordings, and that was like early 2003.
Because it's interesting with that band, looking at the recording history and what have you, because you did sort of, I don't know, 3 or 4 of your own recordings. I mean, one of them only came out a year or so ago, which is, you know, in my opinion, the best stuff you ever did.
Well, yeah, it totally was, but it didn't come out till now, so it took
which is
that long.
Criminal. And but there's a lot of the cool thing about that band is that there's a really obvious progression from the beginning through to what the last recordings of, you know, it changed quite a bit, but you gigged fairly regularly, but you also had enough support from labels and what have you to the point where there's like a compilation for like when you were only like 5 years in of live stuff and what have you. There's a bunch of what you would say unofficial stuff, but it's, you know, labels like fucking Amateurs and what have you recording you live. And for a band that, I mean, you lasted 6 years, which for some small bands is a reasonable amount of time, but there's a lot of recordings out there, whether it's studio recordings or live recordings, and I find that quite interesting. You definitely had a small but pretty loyal following from early on, I think.
Yeah, well, that's just because there wasn't really any other bands doing it, you know. I mean, there was only like a handful of British bands. Like in the early 2000s, was like Moss were doing things. It was like a kind of Matador who they came up and they were on like the Boris tour, and Boris had played at the time, and then we played with them.
Okay.
No one like Al from With False Noise, he'd ask us to like go up to Glasgow and play, and like Black Sun they were around. So we played with them like a number of times, and
yeah,
it was kind of like Ramsey's in London, and that was about it really. I mean, there wasn't really,
but it
wasn't really hard to make an impact or whatever.
It was sort of a good bit of coincidental timing that it was around the time when Sun in particular was starting to become really popular, weren't they? And they also started touring the UK. Like, I know they played the Cumberland Arms when I was living down in Leeds and what have you. So it was a little bit of good timing as well, wasn't it, really, that you were doing the right thing at the right time?
Yeah. I mean, that Sun thing, we like promoted that. I don't even remember. It was via the Southern Lord forum that was initially, it was on the Doom Metal. It was like a sub forum of the doommetal.com, and then it became its own forum. And I think somehow it was in touch with Stephen O'Malley, mm-hmm. and then he was asking about like, just totally need to do a gig or like play a show when Sun comes over. We want to do a tour, and this was 2003. And he said, and he was like, I totally want to play with Jazz Finger and Trollman and like Marsran and stuff. So we just ended up doing that, and then I think we played with him again the following year or so.
So is this because he did the artwork for Solid State? So is this before or after that, or like did that?
This would be after. After, yeah.
Okay. So did you tap him up to do that originally, or were you already in sort of conversations with him? Was he already a fan before he?
I don't know. I just kind of knew of it, and then I had this idea for the sleeve, and like nobody really knew how to do the layouts and that of what we wanted to do, and then it was like, oh, well, we'll kind of ask him because he's like a designer who designs record sleeves.
Yeah.
Well, that was that simple, really, because no one could.
Because it's like a crucifix gatefold kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just a bit ridiculous, like ambitious, this idea. And I thought, like, well, who could do it? Well, I suppose.
Yeah.
None of us could do it, so ask someone who does it.
Yeah.
Who can do it.
No, it's an awesome cover. It works really well.
Well, yeah, it was totally, because I think it's like a Danzig album sleeve. I know there's a Test Department one that folds out like that.
No, let's backtrack. You said Danzig, you meant Danzig. Right. Don't try and be cool about it. It was Lucifuge, wasn't it?
Well, it probably was. I mean, I've never heard it. I knew Danzig did one.
After Mammothus being the first recording when it was just you and Lee, the first band recording, and we've just talked about the artwork, but is that Solid State?
That's the first one as a band. Well, we've recorded stuff on like 4-tracks, like Lee was big into 4-tracks, and like before that, like the Orange stuff was recorded on a 4-track as well. We recorded that stuff. I remember, well, there's a story there because it's like we turned the house. My parents, I think, had gone on holiday for the week, so we just like, oh, we'll record an album in the house. So we'd like just took the living room to bits, turned the table on its side, and that would put that in front of the drums as like a baffle kind of thing. We'd put a mattress up against behind the drums, and then like used two sort of like settees to isolate the guitar and stuff, and then Rob was in the kitchen doing the vocals, so we knew how to kind of record stuff, or we could do like home recording was a possibility. So
that's awesome. I didn't know that.
It was funny. Like, it pissed the neighbor. Well, one of the neighbors. It was really funny. I remember having to go around and like just sweet talk this because he'd leave these answer phone messages, like raging answer phone messages about like the noise and everything. And I remember going around there and like having to sweet talk his wife and things. I was just saying, I'll just be like, another half an hour will be done and that. And
3 hours later, you're still screaming.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't know you'd done that in the house. Because I was looking at the LP the other day and I don't remember seeing any credits on there for recording or like that. I didn't realise you'd done it in the house. That's awesome. So
that was a possibility. So we just kind of continued it on for Marsran, really. I think it was done in a closed circle, really. It was just like the two, there was like bass guitar, drums was in the middle, and all the amps are facing the drums, and we just recorded it live like that, really.
And this is Solid State?
Yeah.
So who recorded that album?
Oh, well, it was us, really. It was Lee's 4-track, and I think I had some microphones, and it wasn't really, I don't know if it was meant to be an album. We just kind of like recorded some stuff that we had, and then we thought like, oh, we'll mix it and do an album. So we kind of had this process. Well, it was kind of the starting of RYN. So it was like,
this must be Dean, is it?
I'd met Dean at a gig, and he'd had like the kind of digital end of recording, or he was doing stuff on the computer, and like we just decided we'd do something because I didn't know much about his background other than like he did some noise, I think, and I'd seen him around, and he just had like loads and loads of pedals, like dozens of pedals, and we just fucked around. And then I went over to his one day, and then he had like a mixer he was recording, and it was Cool Edit Pro.
Oh yeah.
So we'd like with the Marsran stuff, we put the 4-track, we just like recorded into that. We'd like hooked the 4-track up to the mixer, and then just recorded it into Cool Edit Pro, and then just like mixed the album.
Yeah, that'll do the job, like
that way.
Definitely.
Yeah. I managed to do it. I mean, I remember it being a headache doing it, and it took like 3 months to do it. Of just mistakes and trying to learn how to mix things.
Yeah.
It was hard, but yeah.
Was Dean doing Romance already?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the sort of favourite sort of Mars around gigs we did was at the, well, it was at the top of Shields Road. It was the Lord Clyde Hotel it was at the time.
Yeah, I remember it.
And there was like Warhead, the Japanese hardcore band. Dean was playing and we were playing. And I remember he set up this like long table and just put all these pedals on it. And then he like had this bit of sheet metal that he put around his shoulder.
Yeah, I remember this.
He just like contact mic'd it. And
yeah.
he just did this like 3-minute set or something of like harsh noise.
I remember seeing him do the same thing upstairs at the Chillingham Arms in Newcastle as well. Never seen anything like it.
No, it was just, and it was such a strange bill, but at a strange venue, and there was all like these kind of just ate up kind of chavas really, and just like loving it because they were all like just buzzing that someone was using this like shitty room in the bar that they had. We just kind of came in like there was about like, I don't know, 30. It wasn't that big. It was like 30, 40 people. It was just fun, you know.
So I remember we played a gig together in Leeds in about 2006, maybe.
Yes, 5, 6.
At the Pack Horse, where I was playing with Ultra Shit Inferno, but you did a set where it was Marzaran and Romance. So was that a one-time thing, or did you do that a few times? Or
no, that we just used to do stuff like that, kind of one-off. Just like, oh, here's a good idea. We'll just Dean's meant to be playing this thing, and we're meant to be playing this thing, so we'll just like do it together, and he'll like open and play for 10 minutes or whatever, and we'll just kind of play in with our first track. Then it was just a good set on all.
Yeah,
it was just a good idea. Good, it paid off, you know.
Yeah,
it was that when that sort of thing was crossing over anyway, because there was the Southern Lord Forum. There was just like so many people from this area that were on that. We kind of were in bands and did stuff locally. And there was like the Harsh Fest as well down at the Tyne.
Oh, yeah. I remember
and that's kind of where everyone met up, and kind of the early days of everything, these early Newcastle gigs. So the crossover of whenever it was just anyone who was experimenting. I suppose it was experimental music, so people were just kind of, it's like, why not experiment with lineups?
Because that was a few years earlier. Because I remember that was around about 2003-ish.
Yeah.
Because that was the first time I'd seen pretty much everyone on that bill. I'd seen Gin already. I think I saw their first couple of gigs, so they might have been the only band I'd ever seen. But I sort of seeing you guys and seeing Jazz Finger and a bunch of others was the first time I'd ever come across anything like that, really, at the time. And that was Rob who did that festival, I think, wasn't it?
I think it was a kind of cobbled together sort of idea, and then it became this legendary type thing for people when they look back.
It worked. It was a good day.
Gillan was playing with Snot Nosed, and like Trollman played Jazz Finger, and I can't remember who. There was like about 10
New Future Cowboys.
Yeah, I remember I remember seeing that band, and there was like some hardcore bands. Well, Gin, obviously.
Gin, yeah. I don't remember who went on last. Was it Skullflower?
Maybe I think there was 2 Skullflower sets.
Right. I know Jazz Finger were fairly late on, from memory anyway. I mean, it's a long time ago. I know New Future Cowboys were on pretty late because it took them about an hour to set the drums up and take them down again.
Was that band something to do with Venom or something?
The drummer in that band is, what's his real name? I think in Venom his name was Anton. Oh yeah, it's Tony Land. Yeah, so it's Kronos' brother. And then right. I don't know that he was in Venom at that time, but he was in Venom. I don't think he was. He was in Venom like a few years later. And they now famously detest each other and won't speak to each other. And they I don't know what happened, but they just they've cut all ties between each other. But yeah, he is the brother of Kronos.
Okay.
But they were basically a new metal band, weren't they? Really,
I think from what I remember, yeah.
I don't even know how they came to be on that bill, but it was pretty funny. Like, who knew them to ask them to play? It is interesting.
I don't know. I mean, it was just stuff, just things like that just happened. It was a random selection of whoever would. It's like, do you want to? We know some kid who does something, and does he want to play?
Yeah.
And just put people on like that, really.
Yeah, like somebody will have known somebody in that band. In fairness, like that drummer guy, I've met him a bunch of times, and actually, before I joined my first proper band in 1998, I auditioned for his band, which was the most surreal experience. So he was in this band called Sanity's Edge, And I'd done what you did, which was put around an advert in the music shops looking for like a guitarist looking for a band. And one of the influences I put on there was Pantera, amongst all this other stuff, because I was like into my metal at the time. And they picked up on that. And I was 15 and they, God knows how old they were, like well into their 20s, probably early 30s. I don't know how much older they are than me, but I went down and like I met this guy I met him, Kronos' brother Tony, in Pet Sounds. He gave me the cassette tape demo and I went and learnt these 4 songs and then I had a rehearsal with them and it was just totally weird. It was off the back of Westgate Road in Newcastle where all the bike shops either used to be or still are, I don't know. There was this, are they still there?
There's about 2 or 3 bike shops. Last time I kind of was in that area, you know, which was like start of the year. I think I just went up for a look. I was like, let's see how this kind of place has changed. And what I remember though, like the West Road, it was like it was kind of fucking greasy spoons, you know. You get like a boiled burger up there and like just horrible cafes and like dirty bike shops and things. And
well, that was it. And around the back side of it, on the Newcastle brewery side, there was like a back alley, and they had this rehearsal space where you went through the door, and it was like a sort of a really, I don't know what it was, like a really big garage space, I suppose. And there was a tank, like a full tank. And then next to the tank was where they rehearsed, but there was other bands rehearsing in rooms adjacent to them and stuff. And I was this like young kid, 15, like totally out of my depth kind of thing. But I'd learned the songs. Like it was just rhythm guitar and like there was fairly simple metal stuff and I'd learned the songs. But I spent a day with them like rehearsing and then going around had a walk around town. I went to a cafe for a coffee and I basically didn't say anything the whole day because I was just this shy. Well, I wasn't too shy, but I was this young kid with all these older blokes. And then I went down for the rehearsal the next week and I just sort of said, I don't think it's for me. And they were like, yeah, fair enough. I think they were probably pretty pleased. And they were like, but to be fair to you, you were the only person who has come to these rehearsals who's learnt all of our songs, so fair play. But I'm pretty sure Venom used to rehearse in that same place around the same time, and it would make sense because it was his brother, but I'm not sure if that's entirely right, but I'm fairly sure it is.
Okay.
Got to get the Venom stories out.
Well, you've just got, I was just thinking there as Venom came up, you know. I'd remembered back to Newcastle had a squat for about a month or 2 months.
Oh, really?
So it was longer than, it was like 2000. It was just down from where the fire station is before you get to the big, this one I was talking about, and just before the RBS, the Bank of Scotland thing that they've knocked down now, there was this build. I don't know why it was squatted, but it seemed like a pretty impossible thing that there was a squat in the centre of Newcastle, and I remember there was gigs there for a bit because like I remember Oren played one. The generator was like, you know, these 2 hippie guys, you know, like dreadlocks who ran this bikes that powered like a battery generator that kind of would power the band. And then this basement area was like, I remember going down there before we played. Maybe it kind of went to this building a few times, you know, and it turned out the bottom of the basement used to be like a practice space as well for these Neat Records bands.
Oh, right.
Because there was like graffiti on the walls. There was a big, like on one room it just had like Avenger or something. It must have been their practice room, and there was like this Venom graffiti saying stuff around the place like Kronos is a twat or something, you know, like graffiti like that, just kind of scrolled around. So this must have been this kind of like big space that these metal bands had at one point in time.
I was completely unaware of that. I didn't know there was such... I mean, I was still in Newcastle around that time and going to gigs. I missed that one big time. I don't remember it.
That was where the sawn off thing, obviously Scalesy was like well into it, and Pete Dale was really involved with that squatting. And I think it's the only... I don't know any time it's happened since or before. It was just like an interesting period in underground. There was only a couple of gigs on there, I think, and it got shut down pretty quickly. And I'm sure it was on the local news.
It's no big surprise in that area, right in the city centre. But I'm amazed that there was even one there.
Completely, yeah. That's my Venom story anyway.
So, did Dean help to mix the Solid State record? Is that?
I don't know, I always guess it was my idea to try it because we were doing stuff on the computer anyway, and then it was kind of the RYN stuff was that lasted a good while, really. I mean, 2003 to 2011 we did it.
All right.
And there's 3 full-length things that we did, or maybe 2.
I've got 2.
There was 2 CDs, and there was an album as well that we did, like the last thing, and then there was some other just incidental things, and that was the focus, really. I mean, for a lot of the time, I mean, as much as I look back and think like the band stuff, it's like that was as important or more important than that, because it was more the freedom to experiment with the guitar side of things, and we didn't really know what we were doing anyway, what it would be called, or we just thought it was like ambient music.
But the pair of you kind of experiment a lot with and sort of upped your chops in terms of production techniques and that kind of thing, didn't you? It was kind of a playground for music production.
Completely. It was probably more an idea of that, of like just how to mix something or record something, or like what sounds wrong about this and why is that, how can it be improved upon. And we spent like just hours and hours and hours and hours over these sounds, and getting these, like a lot of it came from like a field recording or a guitar, and we used a lot of like EBO, and there was a load of kind of just processing, and then like enveloping, and then we'd do these big long things, and then just see the kind of like how like sounds would interact with each other, and then like how you could mix them, and like I don't really know. There wasn't really an aim. It was just like done until something felt finished.
Yeah,
and that was all it was, really.
Which is pretty rewarding in itself. Like maybe even more so if you're not quite sure what you're doing, and then you do this thing and it works and it sounds good and you're happy with it. It's it's pretty gratifying and rewarding in its own right, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did it regardless of whether anyone was going to put it out or was interested in it. We did it for a few years. Before that happened, we were like, oh, we don't want to put a tape out, we don't want to put a CDR out. I don't think nobody asked us anyway. But then it was like, we'd be doing about 2 years and sending like some recordings off to like labels that we thought, well, we just didn't know anything about anything really. We just sent some labels that we thought were interested in doing this kind of thing. And Drone Records in Germany just said they wanted to do something, and we were like, oh fuck, out of nowhere. It was kind of like 2005. It was a pretty high bar, because they only released 7 inches by like these kind of either really obscure things or like kind of stuff that was higher profile.
For a label called Drone Records, the 7-inch format seems completely at odds with what I assume they were trying to do.
Well, I don't know what they were trying to do, and we didn't really know what they were trying to do. We were just like, oh, someone's into it, and they've got like this group, Troom, who we liked their stuff as well, because it was similar to what we were doing, just kind of experiment with guitars and sound. And we knew like Brian Eno and James Plotkin, and that was like that was all we knew. We didn't know anything else. It was just kind of influenced. It wasn't really influenced by anything specific, musically or whatever. It was just like an idea thing, and like a concept, I suppose. But
it's interesting that it's like a production, sort of almost like a production team rather than a band. That I presume you never played live. Or am I wrong in that? Or
I mean, we did something once or twice maybe, but it wasn't like as RYN, because that was just like, oh, well, that's how we do this. Is completely different to how we try playing live.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Like the RYN thing was unconsciously just a studio effort, and
well, it was completely learning how to like fuck on in that setting or whatever, and that was it.
Which is awesome to have an avenue to do that kind of thing, I suppose, because most people have bands or have their own thing, and that's what they do. But for you and Dean to be able to like sit down, I assume smoke a ton of weed and just try and do some sort of soundscape kind of stuff, that's pretty interesting.
It was just anything excess really. It was just like, say how it affects whatever you're doing. I don't know. We stopped doing it at the end because we just used to get so we'd have to get really, in a different state. Like we, was drinking and smoking weed and fucking just get totally fucked.
Yeah.
And then record some stuff and then not even know how we've done it or what we've done and not really care anymore and just think, well, we should just do this anyway. And we don't have to record anything if we don't want to.
Yeah.
We just hang out and not do things. But I don't know. Just that was that.
So with Marzaran, you like I said, like we were discussing before, you were going for, it's like 6 or so years, and it had like a good amount of releases and that kind of thing. And then you did this last batch of, what was it, like 5 or 7 recordings or what have you that never got released, and then you kind of just, I don't know, did you just stop, or because?
Well, we'd stopped probably. It was only a band for about 5 years. I think the last. It was probably like the same thing that was happened with On the Forest. It's like people went off. We're just doing different stuff. I mean, like Rob was doing like his hardcore bands, like Rise. I think it was one band he was big into doing. And Lee was doing like Skullflower stuff. He kind of like joined Skullflower for a bit, and then I just kind of started doing this instrumental stuff. It was with Mike Smith from Bong. He was playing drums. And like Steve, and we just did this really like technical kind of instrumental. It was just really loud, really noisy. It was.
Is this Punch Cutter?
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about Punch Cutter.
Yeah, so that was happening. So it kind of stopped, and I think we did something. The last gig was with Piss Jeans in Leeds.
Oh, nice.
And like, it was because Ewan had asked us to play. And we were just like, well, we don't really know much about Piss Jeans so much, and but like Ewan had asked us to play, so we're just like, yeah, we'll play.
This is Ewan of Unicorn Love,
Gruel
fame, but also he promoted a lot of gigs in Leeds and Bradford over a lot of years as well, didn't he?
Yeah, so he'd asked us, and we're just like, yeah, well, of course, yeah, we'll do that. So we just did that, and then it just didn't really happen anymore. I think we had another practice or 2 to see if it would work, and it just like there was just nothing. Then I just wasn't there really, so I just stopped doing that. Other people were doing different things.
So moving on from the band stuff, where did the idea for the podcast come from? So obviously this podcast, where did that idea come from? What made you want to do it?
I don't know. It was like a couple of years ago, maybe 2017 or 18. I was like, I'd listened to some podcasts. I remember listening to some like earlier than that. Maybe around the time, maybe 2014, 15. I remember listening to some and not really knowing what they were or anything about them. Just that they were like just interviews or insights with people who were in bands who I kind of wanted to know about. And then I guess around 2018, I had no idea like how to do one or what I was doing about or anything. Just because it seemed like you need a focus for one, or you just stupid. It's just people talking about shite.
Non-linear.
It could be just boring to listen to. Like it's either you're either like a celebrity sort of voice, or you just made something boring. But if you look at it from a more of an artistic, creative perspective, you can do that.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up happening. And it was like meeting, it was you and Sned again. Whenever I was 2019 or something. And I thought like, because we were asking him stuff about,
Well, we would have these long rambling conversations, wouldn't we? We would get together, because I would do it with Sned, and then we would do it as a sort of 3-piece where we would get together for a few hours, and as we always do when any of us get together, these long conversations go on, don't they? And we end up quizzing Sned on certain things, and I'll quiz you, and all these little details and these sort of like really interesting stories come out, and then they just disappear into the ether, don't they?
Yeah. So it was just like capture that. It was almost just a standalone thing, really. I thought Sned's got all this interesting stuff, and then it became more sort of interesting. These angles you could like fit it into, an hour or so, and just get like an idea, like a better angle of something that you had. A person that you knew but you didn't really know, you might have known them fucking a long time, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. You've known these people but you don't really know.
But even by his own admission recently, he as a lot of people have done during the sort of pandemic and whatever, he's been reflecting a little bit and looking back at all the stuff that he's done, and kind of for the first time in his life he's sitting back and taking stock, and that coincides with the book that he's been writing about the station and the garage. And I think even he realizes that, like, I did cover a lot of ground. He was in bands, he did the label, he did a lot of touring, promoting, like he did a lot of stuff, and I think the conversations with you have really helped to draw a lot of that out as well.
Yeah, well, it was unsung. It was kind of unsung, and I was thinking, fuck, this is like, you hear there's these podcasts, and it's always like Americans, and it's always the same fuckers on about the same shit, just like the stories getting bigger and larger, like, and more fantastic, and everything's great, and it just like getting a perspective of like what was happening around here and what was going on in this country and these bands in like the 80s. And I'd spoken, there was like just numerous or like occasions of like seeing him and refining this idea of what we had of like the information that would be like interesting to people, that would work. And it kind of like, it took months of getting this idea together and then like producing one for us both to realise that, A, I could do one, and like, he could do one.
Mm-hmm.
And like, B, that he would, like you were saying, like reflect on the formative years of like the station club and what things were like in the 80s.
Yeah.
And then he did the book, and that must have kind of jogged him on a bit, like his memory, to think, I need to get this stuff down, because it's like it just helps get it out there. You talk about it, and then you can write about it, and then you get ideas and the new ideas, and then, well, I can kind of do another one with someone maybe, and do another one. And there was just people that I wanted to know about, the people that I'd known for a while, people like Mike Vest, and just get the kind of story behind things that were happening, because they're not always as the same. Because it's at the time it's hard to kind of reflect back on what you were doing yourself, never mind what other people were doing.
Yeah.
And what their angle on things was. Just kind of do one, see what happens, do another one, see if someone else wants to do one. And yeah, that's the whole idea. All these people they were around, when I was young, when I was growing up, like teens, 20 years on, where are these people and what they do now, and like how the idea or like ethic of doing it, or like doing it yourself, is how that's progressed and things, and like how it's come full circle sometimes, and the way that you think about things. And yeah, it was just like digging to find people who haven't done that, who should do that or haven't done that, and just like putting it out there. And it's, it was a success just doing one, really.
Yeah.
But then you learn how to produce them and how to do these things. Because I'm not a fucking person who interviews. I don't know. I mean, I've done stuff where I don't really know anything about whoever it is that I'm speaking to, so I'm coming at it from a perspective of like, I don't really know, so I'll just ask.
But I think one of the things that you're quite good at is just keeping out of the way and let them tell the tales. And
well,
not kind of, interrupting too much, which I think I probably do that.
Well, that's the thing. You listen to stuff and you're just like, fucking hell, people should just shut up, whoever, you don't want to hear, nobody wants, I'm just meant to be hidden hand. I'm not looking to be famous because of anything. I'm just like some guy with an interest who was asking some questions, who put it together, edit it and clean it up, whatever, in the best way possible, and then present it. And that's it. anything was just taken to an extreme. Like alcohol was just, nobody really drank. Like coffee was the only thing as well, but then even that was extremes, because like I remember, this is funny, it was like we were on down at Tony's one time, and Tony was asking Robbie, he was like, oh yeah, do you want a coffee and all that? Robbie was like, oh yeah, can I have like 7 spoons of coffee and like 9 teaspoons of sugar, please? And it was like deadly. Yeah, they were like serious though. It's like, oh yeah, no problem, yeah. And Rob used to like have sugar lumps and stuff, and like eat loads of sweets before we were playing, and just go hyper. And
Jesus,
he threw blood up as well one time as well. He just like,
from what? From coffee?
Singing.
Oh, from singing. All right.
From doing he'd do that and do vocals, and then he was just like threw blood up and stuff, and
Christ,
punk rock and everything.
Well,
I don't know. It's just daft.